I've been traveling. I was at my sister's house and she has a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And the 4-year-old is a boy, just so robust, curious, just learning so much so fast. The last night that I was there, I was getting ready to leave and I felt this little hurt in my heart. And I was like, man, I'm missing out on all of this wonder and play and him like full speed running into me. I was like, oh, these little magical moments. And I hadn't seen my sister in a few years, but he went from like 1 to 4, like in the time that I was gone. And now I'm like, wow, these are really just magical moments that I'm missing out on. And I'm like, okay, how can I create a life where I can be in community here and here and here and have the freedom to untether myself from like 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, and maybe I make enough money to go on a trip and that sort of thing. So I felt exactly what you were talking about with my sister. How can I be of service to my sister if I'm never there, right? I can talk to her on the phone, or maybe she'll send me pictures of the kids in her family, but it's not the same as like helping my 4-year-old nephew learn about different animals or how to write their name or whatever, right? And so,
Um, Kind of along the same lines and maybe a little tangent off of it, I feel like this also kind of ties into like this whole kind of cultural shift towards like parental estrangement, right?
mhm,
And it's really interesting because I think about all the grandparents and the parents who are like, I just want to be a part of your life. I just want to do this, right? While the kid is like, I want you nowhere near me. And
mhm,
thank you so much. I never want to see you again, right?
yeah,
And so at the same time that people are desiring closeness and connection and community, we have this kind of like uprising in some ways of people being like, not me, not now, right? And I'm curious
yeah,
for you, kind of like how you've seen that in your work, with like teens headed off to college, et cetera.
yeah, yeah. And as parents and caregivers, we sometimes forget that it is in their biology to move further and further away from the nest, right? So children need 100% connection when they're babies.
Yeah.
They have no autonomy, right? But as they go and move in the world, we know 3 and 5-year-olds, we've all heard them like, I can put on my shoes myself, but they're struggling and then they get frustrated and they cry and all that. But like that gradual shift from connection to autonomy is going to continue. It is it is in their biology to continually kind of step further and further out into the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And rely less on that. And there's a grieving process that parents will go through. And they may not see it as grieving, but there's like, oh, he doesn't call me mommy anymore, or he doesn't call me daddy anymore. And now it's Greg, or now it's they call you by your first name or something, right? And so at the minimum, even with healthy relationships, children will become more autonomous. They'll start to kind of pull away more and more and more. And our hope as parents and caregivers that we have instilled in them the skills to survive, right? And when there's parental estrangement, there maybe the relationship is so strained that that child at 16 says, when I turn 18, I'm moving out and I'm never going to see you again. They may feel that way in this moment, and it may break your heart that you have put blood, sweat, and tears into this child, and they are vowing to never speak to you again, and they don't have the longitudinal wisdom to realize that what you did for them and how you help them and those sorts of things. And oftentimes feelings, they don't realize that feelings are impermanent, right? And so they may be adamant that they will never speak to you again, and maybe at 20 they will be like, oh, I was such a butthole to my parents and I miss them. And I'm so sad that I treated them so poorly. And, I understand that my parent has trauma too, or I understand that my parent was doing the best that they could. And there comes an opportunity for forgiveness, reconciliation, and those sorts of things, hopefully, right? With age sometimes comes wisdom, right? And so the things that we were so angry about in our childhood when we were teens and get hopefully reconciled as adults because we can see it. Our brain is matured. We can see it from a different perspective. We see that our parents were doing the best that they could with the tools that their parents gave them, right? And so a lot of times that's how generational trauma gets happened. But this is where, as therapists and coaches in the space, really can encourage parents not to pass along generational trauma, right? And can give their children a better life, better skills, better resources, more love, or those sorts of things than what they got, right? And to manage the grieving process, right? And to realize that things can course correct over time. We just have to be patient and do the best we can with the circumstances that we have.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people, like just in an example of kind of like, when I turn 18, I'm never going to talk to you again. I think there's a lot of parents that totally take the bait as far as like they're fighting against this like ultimatum that their kid gave them. And then it
Mhm.
takes away from them being able to really commit and like invest in that relationship at that point in time. Right. Because
Yeah.
we're growing creatures. Like there's like, something last week you could say, I really want to do this, right? And then this week it's a totally different goal, right? And so I think that allowing people to kind of grow and shift and change is part of that process. So if we commit to their end goal of like, I'm never going to talk to you again, right? You're just in this, like, you're fighting the future for what? And you're missing out on potential opportunities to really increase that connection and like make that more stable and solid, right? And I think there's at the same point an opportunity to really, if your kid is saying that, listen, right? Like really sit down and listen, be curious, lean in with like, what is this about for you, right? Like what would that mean for you? Like, not committing and fighting them on it, but just like being genuinely curious, and understanding like that voice and where they're coming from. Because I do think that while they're at home with you, you then still have the opportunity for some of that repair, for some of that support and connection, and like building these really positive memories, right? But if you're
Yeah.
only fighting them on like, okay, you're not going to talk to me when you turn 18, like fine, right? And then they turn 18, they leave, you've missed out on this opportunity to like really invest in that and hear them and like build off of the difficult moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many factors in this specific instance, right? How did I contribute as a caregiver parent to this situation, right? So listening to the story, right, sometimes is really painful,
Yeah.
right? Because now as adults, we have to get served up some humble pie by our child, right? And most people don't like eating humble pie, even if you put whipped cream on it, right? And so,
Humble with
so
cream, that's why.
yeah, right. So there's a lot of humility that's involved in like kind of assessing the reality of this, right? And if we have a child that has some mental health challenges, that's another layer to it, right? And our child is always watching us. I have said this, and I did a video on this, but our child is always watching us, right? And so if we excommunicate ourselves from the relationship before they turn 18, that's what they will learn.
Yeah.
When I get really challenged, I just push away people and people will go away, right? Instead of leaning into me and maybe being curious, maybe people just leave, And if the person who is supposed to love me the most now divorces from the relationship, what does that say for someone else who's not related to us, right? And so it can really warp our sense of relationship when a parent divorces themselves from the child, right? And just says, I give up, right? Because we all, I think, uh, there is this expectation that our parents are not going to give up on us, even when we're difficult, even when we're having a bad day, even when we take it out on them. And we have to remind parents that they are human too, that they are allowed to cry, they're allowed to be upset, they're allowed to want to quit, right? And that's normal, right? Like, and there's no perfect manual that you get from the hospital. Like, here's the baby, and here's the massive manual that will come, look at page 765 when your child turns 13, you're going to have to deal with this, right? So, you know, um, navigating that parental estrangement, being curious, and I love what you said, just be curious, right? Step back, how are they seeing it, right? Because just listening to the story and the perspective will help you as a parent and caregiver understand how they see it. What circumstances did they put together to make that conclusion, right? Maybe you took away their phone because they were doing something inappropriate. And now they have decided at 18, I'm never talking to you again, right?
Yeah.
So Or maybe this built up over years and years of being a helicopter parent, being militant in rules and everything. And now that child just says, I am an autonomous human being. I'm old enough, big enough, strong enough now to defend myself and to willfully be obstinate, right?
Yep.
And things like that. So I think being curious, like you said, is a great perspective, right? Like how did we get here? And sometimes if we as a parent or caregiver can't figure that out, we need to ask for help, right? So maybe the neighbor who's intimately involved with our family, they come over all the time, they see us, maybe we need to ask for their perspective or a therapist's perspective or a coach perspective, right? To really get outside of our box because we can get blinders on and not see things for what they are and to have someone who is objective, qualified, third-party perspective to really well, here's the positives. Here's the negatives. And where do you want to go? How can I help you get there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally doesn't. It reminds me of oh my God, Tim the Toolman Taylor and all of his like
Yeah,
his chats, right? Of like, I'm just gonna go out and talk to this. Exactly, right?
Wilson.
Yeah, there you go. And I just getting, the wisdom of others, right? And like having that community of people to brainstorm other things, right? Because I agree with you. Like I think we watch everything that our parents and guardians do, right? We're so hyper, vigilant around the entire thing and we soak all of it up. And then those things become kind of ingrained in us. We learn those habits, right? And if we're
Mhm.
not getting other perspectives and we're not necessarily adding in like new skills and new tools and new like experiences, right? So talking to your community, joining a group, right? Having kind of that external opinion is going to help widen your understanding of it and also just give you like additional perspectives. And that's one of the things I love being about therapists is because I'll be the devil's advocate, I'll be God's advocate, I'll be all of these different things to be like, here are the 37 different perspectives I can offer you, right? And like what feels most in tune for you and your family, like where do you think we're coming from? Is there a combination of things that we're dealing with, to
Yeah.
like work through all those things? And it just helps the skill building part because you're right, nobody gives you a manual. They might tell you how to feed a baby, right? And how to play with a baby and how to like, support, the baby stuff, but there's no manual for like how to raise a teen because they're also different. We're all unique individuals. We come from different
Yeah.
backgrounds in history. We have different experiences. And
Mhm.
I think that's one thing that we've both kind of been on the journey of is like, how do we support parents with tweens and teens and understanding and being able to parent the best you possibly can just support
Right.
that kid to getting to a really safe, healthy, balanced adulthood.
Yeah, yeah. So and there is some stigma around asking for help, right? But we get help all the time as adults. We go to the mechanic when our car breaks down. If we're sick, we go to the doctor. If we have a plumbing leak, we go to a plumber. So we are going to experts all the time in life, right? And so, but in this space that you and I occupy, sometimes there can be some shame, guilt, secrecy around asking for help from experts in this space. And what I want to remind parents is that you go to experts all the time, and there is zero shame in asking for help. And usually that help is short term, right? We're going to course correct you a little bit over here, give you some tools, put some gas in the car, and you'll be on your way. It's not a lifelong sentence in a sense. And so I would encourage parents to look at asking for help from therapists and coaches as courageous versus just going it alone. And if I watch, 10 more videos, I'll have it figured out. And that is a completely valid place to learn and to ask for or to seek help, right? But it's static, right? Watching YouTube videos is static and it may not exactly translate to your family, right? So asking in real time from someone who can get in and see all the different inner workings of the family system can give you customized, contemporary, relevant support, right? And so it is an act of courage to ask for help. No family is perfect. All family systems have their quirks and challenges and things like that. And so I would encourage parents even to reach out for a consult, right? Like, I'm seeing this and I'm so stressed that we're going down a bad road and oh my gosh, my child's going to end up in jail, blah, 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 blah. But at least having that perspective, a third party perspective, can help us navigate, are we catastrophizing something or is it as bad as it looks, right? Like, oh, yeah, I think we're kind of moving in that direction, but what are the tools, steps perspectives that we can take to move away from, you know, challenging outcomes or painful outcomes to less painful, at best, positive outcomes.
And I think too, the act of getting help in some family systems could be a brand new concept. And there are a lot of people that weren't necessarily taught and supported in emotional regulation and emotional understanding and awareness. And I talk about it a lot with my kids. Like when we think about the relationships, right, that we have, we're often role modeling them on the very early relationships we had in our lives. So our parents, our, first romantic partners, our friends, right? They may or may not have been healthy or supported or regulated, right? And so sometimes when we're doing that work with people, it really is this idea of like, we're teaching sometimes parents and guardians, like, is that emotion grief or is it sadness, right? You had mentioned the idea of like how a lot of parents like don't necessarily identify this like transition of their kids' skills to grief. And I would totally agree with you because I think a lot of times they're like, oh, I'm sad, right? I'm sad my kid isn't calling me, like mama anymore and it's mom, right? I'm sad about this, but like that's grief, right? That's grief and loss. And for some reason as a society, we those are like these deep, dark secrets that we don't talk about, right? Grief, loss, and sadness. Sorry, loss and shame.
Yeah.
Like three of the things that like we just don't, I don't think we're good at identifying and like helping ourselves process through those pieces, and particularly with like parenting.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily associate the transition, the normal developmental transition of children into adolescence and then into teens and into adulthood as grief. But there are a lot of, there's a lot of little micro moments that we grieve as parents and caregivers that, oh, they don't need my help anymore to take a bath, or they don't need my help anymore to put their clothes on. They don't need my help anymore to clean their room, or they don't need my help to get to the mall to go see their friends. Now they have their own car, and or they can ride their bike, or those sorts of things. And so understanding that these transitions are healthy, they can be healthy and they are positive, right? But parents are shifting identities, right? From parent to mentor to friend, right? So I always encourage parents to stay in the parent role as it's appropriate, right? Mentor. Don't skip to the friend level, because I think, to me, this is what I believe. When they turn 18 and they get to be an adult, that's when your relationship can shift from parent to like friend/mentor, right? And so a lot of parents will want to move to the friend zone, right? This is the healthy friend zone, right? Where I don't want to really discipline my kid. I don't want to be the bad cop all the time. But when we move to the friend zone too quickly, it can be difficult to go back to the parent zone when it's absolutely needed, right? Now we need to, tell our child, you have to come in at 10 p.m. instead of 2 a.m., And so it can be hard to go backwards into parent mode when we have to navigate guardrails and rules and some consequences if needed and things like that. So.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's so true and fair that as your kids grow and shift and develop, that your role and identity as a parent grows and shifts and develops, right? That you're not going to have the same expectations for a toddler or a 13-year-old, nor is your kid going to have the same expectations of you, right? And so I think if we can allow the parenting journey to kind of grow and shift and change and morph that relationship, everyone is going to feel like it's a more accurate representation of where they're at, right? And so I talk a lot about how, to me, with like phase of development, birth to 5 is all about attachment, right? That it's like they need to see positive attachment. They want the love, the snuggles, the consistency, the care, right? 5 to like 10 is more around this idea of like you're showing them, you're teaching them, you're helping them learn like the family history, like experimenting all these things, right? Are we chicken farmers, right? This is how we do it as chicken farmers. This is our religion. This is the moral value around these things. Like, what is religion, right? And then the 10 to 13, 10 to 14 zone for me is kind of like, you have a lot of kids who are like, I want to try this, and I need you to step back and just like, let me try it, let me fail, let me experiment, but they still want you there as a support. And then like 13 to 16, they're like, no, just stand back there and like, I'll come get you when I need you. Don't interfere otherwise. Right.
Yeah.
And being able to kind of like go through that, like that takes a lot of skill as a parent to go from like, birth to 16, because you're hitting all these different developmental needs that your child has. which is just really hard.
Right. Well, and parents don't realize that there's a lot of identity in being needed, right? And when they shift from my child needed me all the time to my child doesn't need me at all except for to pay the light bill and pay the water bill and make sure the roof is still on the house and those sorts of things and drive me to the place but drop me off, but don't drop me off in front of the place. I want you to drop me off over here, right?
Don't kiss
So
me.
yeah, yeah, don't kiss me, don't hug me, don't touch me, like all of these things.
Mhm.
We are having to shift our identity as adults, right? And I think there's a grieving and the letting go, but also on the opposite side, can we look forward? Can we look forward and go, my child is feeling more autonomous. I can see them using the critical thinking skills. I see them engaging in the values and traditions that I have instilled in them. They're exploring romantic relationships. Okay, this person seems like a good fit for them, seems like a healthy relationship to be involved in, and kind of celebrate that transition, right? Like grieve on one side, but also look forward and go, wow, they are becoming the adult that I hoped they could be, and things like that. And so being careful and judicious to not just focus on the grief side, but also kind of look forward as well.
No, absolutely. Because like you're seeing your kid at the same time you're seeing your kid never do this thing again, right?
Yeah,
You're seeing your kid do this thing for the first time,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so like they may not, like need you to like tie their shoes anymore, but that's the first time they put their new shoes on by themselves, right? That's the
yeah,
first time they picked out that new pair of shoes by themselves, right? That's the first time they didn't need you to support them in a social situation. And like those are such beautiful, amazing accomplishments, right? And I think
mhm,
that's the other piece of it where it's like, yes, your kid is growing up and that is like sad and loss and grief and there's stuff that goes with that. But watching your kid flourish and grow and do all these like new fun things that you just like you get to see them do that, right? And that's like
yeah,
such an amazing thing. And like that's actually one thing I love about working with teens is because like sometimes they'll come into session and they'll be like, yeah, this thing is like really hard for me. And then, we're working on it, working on it, working on it. And all of a sudden they come in and they're like, Charity, guess what I did? And they did the fucking thing. And I'm just like, they're so freaking proud of them, right? And it's like, oh my
yeah,
God, tell me everything. Like, I want to know how that experience was for you and what got you there. And like, tell me all the things. And it is like such a cool experience, even as their therapist. Like, I'm not even their parent, I'm their therapist, but like, I want to know, I want to celebrate that. I'm so excited for them. And there is like a piece sometimes where it's like, oh, like, you did this. We'll keep talking about it. We'll keep working on it because it's a process. But like, you don't
mhm,
need me even in the same way. Like, you don't need therapy in the same way that you did
yeah,
maybe like 6 months ago.
yeah, yeah. I kind of coming to this space of like gratitude, right, for witnessing like as therapists and coaches, when we see that light bulb moment for a parent or a child or a teen, have that light bulb moment, it's beautiful that we get to witness another human being among the billions of human beings growing, learning, changing uh, in a forward positive trajectory. We get to witness that. And that's what is really beautiful. And that's what makes this human experience so wonderful is that we get to witness these beautiful, heroic moments that, no one's writing them down in the history books, but they are occurring. They are occurring in your child and in your family. These little beautiful moments that add to the totality of the experience of being a father, a mother, a grandmother, an adoptive parent, a foster parent, all of these things. And that can be what makes life worth living.
I say all the time that like if I can just add 1% to someone's like life or thought or groundwork or whatever that I have made an impact, right? And
Yeah.
like that to me is like the true essence as a therapist of like making an impact on people, supporting them to get where they want to be. And like
Mhm.
I think that has been something I've internalized because it's like I'm so freaking proud of people when they've, even that 1% shift where they're a little bit more open to something when they're this, like I'm like, that is incredible because we are humans that can be really rigid. We can be very black and white, we can be very closed off to those things. But when I see it, it is like amazing, right? It's like that one thing that's like that's why I'm a therapist.
Yeah, I love watching the light bulb moments, the little just beautiful moments that we get to witness another person that they did something that will change the rest of their life, right? Like, oh, I ended an unhealthy relationship. So going forward, hopefully they will navigate towards healthy people instead of unhealthy relationships, right? But we get to be a part of something that will There's a saying, I forget who it's attributed to, not me, but plant trees in the shade of which you know that you will never sit, right? And so we are planting seeds into the future so that children will grow up to be as healthy as possible. And then they, in turn, will plant seeds into their children so that generations to come, and this is sort of my mission statement, where I truly believe that children will change this planet for the better. And children will ask, why not instead of why, right? And children are not bound and do not have the sort of rigid thinking that a lot of adults have, and they have more imagination, more creativity. They want to lean more towards inclusion instead of exclusion, right? And so, kind of bringing it in a contemporary context, like my true hope is that children in one generation will change this planet for the better, because as old rigid systems become brittle, they will go away and a new system will come forward. And my hope is that children will change this planet. I have high confidence that children will change this planet for the better.
No, I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think that we are definitely doing in some ways a better job of, supporting that creative thinking and the spirit and like the drive. And in other ways, I feel like we're more able to pinpoint kind of where that is shifting, right? So like I also specialize in like LGBTQ folks, and I talk a lot about gender identity and characteristics and masculinity and femininity. And what's really interesting is that when you have kids as kids, right, birth to 5, they play with all the toys, they do all the things, right? They wear
Right.
dresses, they play the dress up, they're like not a problem, right? And then around 5 and 6, when they've been really acutely aware of like different roles in society, we have people who are like, that's a girl's toy, I'm not playing with that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the same thing in our education system. There was a really cool study. I can't remember the entire context of it, but the study talked about how we basically stifle kids' creativity by around age 7 because of the way our education system is like set up and built.
Yeah.
Like over the course of time, by the time someone graduates high school, they're less engaged, less inclined, less driven, less motivated towards all these like really creative things because we've already killed that. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm really hopeful that we can create systems and provide support and keep the mission and the value alive that gets those kids that are really creative and enjoying engaging and want to create communities to the point where they can do that in adulthood, and then we haven't killed it for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And like children are so wonderful. Like maybe a child is interested in how things are built and they really love Legos. And if we foster that within an educational context or within a familial context, they might grow up to be like a civil engineer. Or maybe we have a child that just has a natural inclination towards music, right? And when we steward a child's natural curiosity and imagination, I truly believe whether that becomes they're a great musician or whether they're a great engineer or whatever it is, when we steward the experience that a child is happening through curiosity and imagination and experimentation and all those sorts of things, um, they will find their way. Maybe they're interested in Legos for a couple of years, and then it moves to dinosaurs, and then it moves to cars, and then it moves to kinetic, objects and stuff like that. And as long as we steward that experience, they will start to kind of navigate. I really don't like um, I really don't care about how things are built, but I really do care about animals, for example, right? And they can navigate things that they will kind of say, well, that I really don't care about that. No, I really do care about this. And so when we steward those experiences, they will get an opportunity to learn what they're passionate about, what they're not passionate about. And I truly believe that, children will find their way when we steward their experience with some guardrails, right? Like, no, you can't go out and build your own concrete bridge in the backyard. But maybe
Right.
we can do a smaller scale version, right? Or something like that. But when we do it with guardrails, they get an opportunity to really sort of discover what they're going to do in society, what their purpose is, what they love, what they value, what they don't value, and all those sorts of things. So I, and there's so many things in this world that could be better. And I too many to name, but some child right now under the age of 18 will solve a societal problem, and when we steward the experiences of children in general, one child or a group of children will become an adult and work with other adults that will solve a societal problem like hunger or poverty or, you know, global warming, if you believe in that, or solve systemic problems like, you know, how do we help people do this, or how do, as a society, how do we, reduce homelessness or whatever it is, right? So I think. When you think about it in that context, like we need every child to move into a healthy adulthood that we can. In men's work, we say there are not enough of us to stop doing what we're doing. And I think I want to encourage parents to do the best job you can, because maybe it's your child that will do something big. Maybe it's your child that will have a healthy family and be an example for another healthy family. There's just so many infinite possibilities. So, encouraging parents to positively steward children forward plants seeds into the future where children will hopefully do great things.
It's absolutely okay for your kid to get involved in something, even if they never use it again. Because for
Yeah,
some reason, that is something that they're like driven towards, that they're curious about. And who are we to tell them no?
yeah, yeah. I truly believe, this is my personal belief, and it bears out in my own life, is that each experience leads to the next one. And the previous experience's lessons will be the foundation in which to engage the next experience. And for example, I had been teaching parenting classes with up to about 12, 15 parents and things like that. And so I know that because I did that, it gave me, public speaking skills, training skills, those sorts of things, to where when someone approached me and said, "Hey, would you like to give a talk in front of 200 people?" I was like, sure, right?
Yeah.
And so like I can look backwards and go, oh, because I did that,
Mhm.
I now have the courage and skills and to consider the possibility of doing this, right? And so when we look back into children, like, oh, that experience happened to my child so that they would have the capacity to deal with this or to overcome this or to engage this particular thing, right? So each thing builds to the next thing, right? And it's obvious that you're running, you didn't want to be an Olympian or anything like that, but all of those skills taught you resiliency and courage and how not to give up and to follow through with things and all those sorts of skills that you used in so many other areas of your life, right? So now all of those experiences pour into other cups,
Yes.
right? So it's amazing.
Yeah. No, and I just feel like that is kind of like the culmination of all of it, right? Is like the experiences we have are gonna go into other experiences, and that is the groundwork, that is the foundation, right? That we're laying down. And so I think when you're parenting, when you're working with someone, we have to be so intentional and aware of like what foundation are we giving people, right? What experience
Mm,
are we giving them? They're gonna pour into different cups.
yeah.
And it's brutal, it's hard, like we're not saying parenting is easy, but I think the awareness, getting support, help, communication, all of it just helps like nurture those understandings.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
Do you want to give us a quick summary of kind of like what you're up to in the next couple months and where people can find you and what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So my email is gregory@walkingmeadows.com. I am currently traveling the whole country, meeting people in different cities and doing different work. I'm doing some virtual work. In the fall, I'm planning on having a parenting support class that's based on attachment theory and empathy. And so if families are struggling to communicate, the relationship is strained, whether that your child is an 8-year-old or an 18-year-old or a 15-year-old, this could be a great opportunity to take a 9-week confidential closed circle class where we teach you a lot of skills. We give you a lot of education around development, trauma focused impact and care, attachment theory, empathy, all of these skills so that you can take those skills into your family and into your life that will change the trajectory of your family's dynamics, hopefully forever. right? And so I have a parenting class coming up in the fall. I have a parenting support group that meets in the night. It's about a 60-minute class where it's a small group of closed confidential space where a few parents can come, and it's more support-based versus psychoeducation. This
Right.
is where parents can go to vent, ask for support, ask for advice, feedback, get clinical feedback, and things like that. So that parenting support group is a 4-week commitment, and you can come in and go as you please. And then, of course, I have one-on-one virtual sessions as well if you want kind of more specific. Um, Closed support in a sense, where it's just me and you talking about what's going on versus some parents may not be comfortable in a group setting. I am on YouTube, Walking Meadows Coaching. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Walking Meadows. So you can find me there. You can direct message me, email me, and so yeah, so I do free consults. So if you have a question about something that's challenging your family, I would love to talk with anyone about those things. And that's where you can find me and what I'm up to.
We'll link everything you said below too, so people have kind of like quick access. But definitely
Yeah.
feel free to check them out and get your consultation. And I hope you guys all got something from this today. I had a really awesome time talking about it, and it's great to like connect with other professionals that are kind of aligned with this vision of like how do we help get people there, right, to really be healthy humans.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm grateful for the conversation. I'm really grateful for us connecting and being able to kind of untangle some of these difficult topics to give parents some perspective and tools and to remind them that they don't have to go it alone.
Yes. Well, and that's the whole thing is that like we're here, like we're passionate supporters of like parenting journeys and teens. And so like you had said earlier, like it takes so much like courage to reach out and like we are
Mhm.
here for you when you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.